I want to start you down the road toward building a full game tree that you could use in your programs to play NIM. So to do that, you'll need to know at least two pieces of information. One is what your start state will be, which we can see here has these 3 rows with 1, 2, and 3 pieces in those 3 rows. You'll also need to know whose turn it is at the beginning for you to be able to fully evaluate whether it's a win or a loss for which player and which moves the player should choose. So then from there, we'll need to examine what the successor states are, also sometimes referred to as the children of a given state. I've drawn out the children, the successors of this starting state here, where someone could choose to take different nodes from different pieces from different locations. And we will then track what the children are to get all the way down to those leaf nodes, those ends of games. And there, if we also track whose turn it is, then we'll know who won or who lost, because that particular player will have taken the last piece. And we'll be able to then bring those values back up throughout the tree and see if, for instance, as I've written here, this is my turn to start with, which of these states do I want to be in? Which move do I want to take? Because I have a choice here. Now it turns out if I built this whole tree from this start state, there are 447 states that I would have to draw there. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to pick one of the successor states, and I'm going to follow through with the children for that state, but understand that each of these states has many, many states that are successors for it, and we would need to know the values of all of those states to make the best choice of which move is going to give us the best outcome here. Hopefully a win. We'll see whether there is one possible. So the first thing to do is to track that this will be an opponent's turn here at this level. And then we're going to figure out what the states are that could come from this. We think about all of them, even if they're obviously bad moves, so that we can then evaluate what possibilities there are for us here. So I'll start off thinking about the opponent takes the first piece from the first row and can take nothing else because you can only take from one row. And then, therefore, there are all 3 left in the bottom row. Another possibility is that they don't take from the first row. They take from the third row, and they take only 1. And another possibility is that they take from the third row, but they take 2. And another possibility is that they take from the third row, and they take all of them. I'm using the underscores for empty rows, in case you hadn't picked up on that. And then I'm going to trace where these come from so I can tell parents when I get to levels that have multiple parents to them. Okay, so now we're faced with another of my turn. And we want to draw out the children's states from all of these. Well, this one's easy because the only possible thing is that I take the last piece and there's nothing left. This one's got 2 children. I'm actually going to move that state over a little so that I've got a little more space for the ones that do have children, or do have multiple children. This one's got 2 children, one where I take from the first row, and one where I take from the second row. I'm sorry, from the third row. And this one has 3 children, one where I take from the first row, and the third row is all left. one where I take from the third row, and there's one left, and one where I take from the third row, and there are none left. And over here we've got 3 children. They all involve the third row. Either I take only one, or I take 2, or I take all 3. Okay, some of these have children as or successor states of their own. I'm going to scroll down a little bit so that I can make enough room for another row of things because I need one. And so this one has no successors. I should draw the connections so that we can see who connects to whom. This connects to that state. These 2 connect to that state. These 3 connect to that state. And these 3 connect to that state. So already I've got some wins and some losses here, and I'll have to think those through in a moment. But first I want to build the rest of the tree. So here this one has only one child, and that is, and this is an opponent turn. So this one has only one child, but this one has 2. Let's make those first because they're going to need to get squeezed in over here. I've got where I take one, I've got where I take both, or the opponent rather takes both. The one over there has only the one where all are taken. I can make more space for that. I don't need to do it right under the node. As long as I know who it came from, I'll do just fine. This has one left possibility and 2 left. Or I'm sorry, 1 left and none left. 1 taken and 2 taken. Same over here. That we could have taken the top row, and therefore the bottom is left. We could have taken the bottom row, therefore only the top is left. And right here, this has only one possible successor, and that is everything is taken. And similarly, these 2 have only one successor, where everything is taken. All right, a little crammed in, but we're going to make it. Okay, so now I need to connect these to the states that they connect to. This one led to that, this one led to that, this one led to that, this state led to these 2, this state led to these 2, this state led there, this one led to these 2. So now I can see I need at least one more turn because my states here have some pieces left. They're all going to be end of game states that will follow from those, but I need to know those. So my turn there, and I'm going to have all empty states like those. Underscore, 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 and similarly another for this one, and another for this one, and finally one more for this one. All right, and I'll connect them, and then we'll be able to make some decisions around values for some of these nodes, some of these states. We will call them sometimes nodes when they're in the tree, and states when we're talking about the game state that represents it. So from here, I've now built my whole tree, and my job is going to be to figure out the values of states. The leaf nodes, the ends of games, are the easiest ones because we can see who won or lost. It was my turn, and I took the last piece. So every end of game down here will be a -1, a loss for me because I took that last piece and lost the game. That means that any of the states that those came from will also be treated as -1s. I lost down that path. and I know that my opponent forced me to that loss. There's nothing I can do about it. However, the ones at the higher level were ones where my opponent took the last piece, and so those will be treated as ones, positive ones, wins for me. And there are quite a few of those. But remember that the number of them doesn't matter so much as whether I can force that to be the path that is taken in the game. So here's an example where, of course, the opponent had to take it because they were forced. There was only one piece left. Similarly, there was only one piece left, so the parent gets the 1. And this only has one child, one successor, so the parent gets the 1. Here, there is a parent state. Both of them are cases where the opponent forced me to take the last piece. So remember that on my turns, I'm going to be looking at the maximums, and on my opponent's turns, I'm going to be looking at the minimum. The opponent will see that both of these are -1. The minimum of that is -1, and so I'm going to be stuck with that -1 in that case, no matter what. I have a similar situation. No, I have a similar situation over here. Even though there's a possible win, my opponent won't choose to take both pieces and automatically lose there. My opponent will hopefully, if they're smart, see that there is a way that they can make me take the last piece, and therefore I'm going to count this state as a -1 as well. Even though there is one possibility under it where I would win, that's a possibility that relies on my opponent making a sort of senseless choice, and I don't want to have to rely on those. I want to be able to force pathways where I win. So this one here had only a 1, and so its only outcome will be a 1, a win for me. And this one over here is a decision, but it's a decision for my opponent, and they will choose the minimum. The minimum of -1 and 1 is -1, so this state is treated as a -1 for me. And we've got one more -1 over here because I had to take the last piece, which counts this state as a -1. This one has only 2 possibilities. Both of them are 1s, so I will be doing maxes there, and the max of 1 and 1 is, hey, 1. So I get to label that one as a 1. This is again my choice. There's a -1, a -1, and a 1. I will choose the 1. And here again we see it's my choice. There's a -1, a 1, and a -1. Does not matter that there are more -1s because on my turn, I will be looking to do maxes. And on my opponent's turn, they will be looking to do mins, finding the cases where I lose. And so I'll alternate back and forth. Remember, this is why the algorithm is called Minimax, is that on my turn, I will look to try to do maxes. On my opponent's turn, I will assume that they will aim for mins. So now I can ignore all this lower piece of the tree because I have the values of all 4 of the child states. Unfortunately, the news is not good for me here. So because, if you remember, the first move was mine and the second move was my opponent's, then this state has to be considered as a loss for me because there is one simple move my opponent can take, taking all 3 from the bottom, that forces me to take the last piece and therefore is a loss for me. And my opponent will choose the minimums among these successor states. And so for that reason, I treat this state as a -1. Now, the good news is that there's still a number of possible states that I could choose from because this was my turn. And so I will still get to look at all of the other successor states from the start state here and do the max among them. So what you would need to do for the rest of this tree is to build the subtree for each of these successor states that we didn't and find out, is there a 1 among them? Is there a place where I'm forcing my opponent to take the last piece and for me to win? And that would give you the value for the overall game here.